This is our Wednesday, June 28th, regular Board of County Commissioners public meeting. And we're going to start with a proclamation. Debbie, come on up.
All right, this is the fun part.
No, you don't want to sit. You want to come over there.
Right in the middle. Got to come over by George.
Right in the middle by George. Don't step in my salad. Right.
This is a proclamation of the Board of County Commissioners of Pickens County, Colorado, honoring Debbie Kendrick, 2017 Employee Spotlight of the Year. Whereas Debbie Kendrick has worked for the Pickens County Jail for nearly 2 decades, as an Aspen police officer before that, and as a school resource officer in Basalt. Needless to say, she's probably seen it all. And whereas no matter what kind of adversity she has faced working with people who are not always at their best, Debbie Kendrick has never lost sight of the jail's philosophy to treat inmates with compassion and respect. And whereas Debbie Kendrick always goes the extra mile to help jail inmates feel cared for, especially those who are incarcerated over the holidays. She often works holidays, including Christmas, and is known for sharing the holiday spirit with the jail population by decorating the jail and delivering extra treats from the jail commissary. And whereas Debbie Kendrick's commitment to her job inside the jail isn't only reflected over the holidays, she brings the same passion and dedication to the jail every working day. Debbie's commitment has had a positive impact on inmate behavior, and she exemplifies a great quote from Fyodor Dostoevsky, thank you.
I practiced that one for a while.
That appears on a coveted jail t-shirts that says, "The degree of civilization in a society can be judged by entering its prisons." Now therefore be proclaimed that the Pickens County Commissioners and the people of Pickens County are honored to recognize Debbie Kendrick as a highly valued employee who consistently raises the bar and is a positive role model for the entire Pickens County staff. So welcome and congratulations. Would you like to make a few comments?
I just want to thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I want to thank you for valuing the work that goes on inside jails and the people who work and live inside the jails and the values that the Sheriff's Office holds for the people who live and work there.
Thank you. We've got Don Bird here, the supervisor for the jail. We got Pickens County Sheriff Joe DeSalvo, as well as some other deputies. Anybody else would like to make any comments? Well, congratulations again. Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
It doesn't have letters on it. Let me move off the side. I want to get a portrait.
Check right behind you.
He's got that.
Either behind me or
Greg,
behind
would you like me to get it so you can be?
If we're all in there, sure. If we're, that's not how you do it. It's just me to-
You still have the light on your faces.
The letters across your forehead.
Come over here, Mike.
Oh, we're doing all of us? Do you want a picture? Oh, okay. I didn't know that all of us. Greg, we gotta get you in there.
I'll take a picture.
Okay, but.
Okay,
Cut us off.
everyone. 1, 2, 3.
Day. Greg's doing a photo study of the Board of Commissioners.
I'm the inside. I'm the inside guy.
The inside guy.
I've known Debbie since I was about 3.
Yeah, I've known her for about 37 years.
Okay, let's see. John, do we have any additions or deletions for today's agenda?
There are no additions or deletions to today's agenda.
Okay. Let's see. We're going to move on to public comments. Anybody wishing to make a public comment, please come forward to this mic, identify yourself, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Yes, sir. You can go first.
Can I give you some things to pass around?
Certainly.
Sure.
Okay. Wants to pass this around?
No, it's off.
Okay.
But just,
Okay.
you get to keep those.
Okay.
But not the radio.
What? No, you can't keep the radio, that's mine.
Pass that around. Oh, okay, but let me hold on to one for the right. Otherwise I'll,
That's cool.
okay.
Repeaters. Uh-huh. There you go.
Now I feel like I'm in court.
No, not with us, you don't. We're a friendly group. Oh, cool.
Okay, we ready?
We're ready.
All right. My name is Sheldon Fingerman. I'm a member of the Ski Country Amateur Radio Club. And what we have, the club has a series of repeaters that go, if I'm not mistaken, from Rifle all the way through Glenwood and all the way up into Aspen. But we lost our the Aspen repeater. It was on Highlands. I don't know what happened to it. I'm not sure, but it's no longer there. So we're missing that link in the chain. Now, I'm not here to go, oh, boo-hoo, I need your help because the radio club doesn't have a repeater. The reason I'm here is I started thinking about it, and I started realizing that phone service goes out pretty quick when you start driving up the pass. I was with a friend, and we saw a fire, and we tried to call it in, and it was like I had the phone in my hand, and I'm like, keep going. I don't have a signal yet. If we had a good spot to put the last repeater, people could use those radios if they had an emergency or something happened. By the way, that radio cost $25.
Wow.
People could use those radios in an emergency to contact the Aspen repeater and get help. And somebody in the club is almost always monitoring that repeater. Patty kindly turned us on to, I think it was Jeff Kruger. And we talked to him, and somehow things just disappeared. I passed it to somebody, and they passed it to somebody in the club, and then it just kind of went away. So, and as far as these radios go, we supply the radios for the Grand Traverse. And not the last Grand Traverse, but the one before it, there is no phone service up there. Somebody had a heart attack, and the radio saved his life. The last field day we had, which was last weekend, somebody up high at the field day, they had some problems with their car. They needed help. They were trying to get a tow truck, and the tow truck driver kept calling me at home in Aspen because he couldn't reach the guy up who was up on top of the hill in Missouri Heights. I used what's called, I think it was IRLP, to get through to the repeaters, and I was able to talk to the guy up there and relay all the messages back and forth. So this is really pretty handy, and I think as far as safety goes, it's a big, huge deal and a big issue. I live at Williams Ranch, so I know a lot of the people that work at the mine. And I said, well, can we put it up at the mine? And they went, oh, yeah, sure, no problem, but we have to talk to the owners. And they talked to the owners, and the owners said, we have plans for the mine, and we can't do that. So anyway, the actual unit is about this big, like that big, and then it requires an antenna that's about that high. It's not a huge deal. We're not putting up a big mast with with a concrete base and all the rest of that. And if it has to be moved, you just pick it up and move it. So all we need is electricity, and I think that's about it. So if you guys can help me out and help the club out and help the valley out and visitors who come to the valley by coming up with a place where we can put this, we will take care of installing it, taking care of it if something goes wrong. It's not your responsibility. We just need a place to put it. And I think it would help the club, number one, but number two, it would also, I think it would be a big addition to the valley. And as far as safety goes, I don't know, maybe you can address this as well.
Well, you're on public comment. You're just about out of time. So.
Okay, all right. So anyway, I'm kind of pleading with you. If you guys can help out, come up with a way to do this. Patty knows how to get hold of me, and we would really appreciate it. And I think it would be a huge boon for the valley as far as safety goes.
All right, thank you. You know, we do have a new translator site, a tower that we've just installed up at the top of Highlands at Loge Peak, and it may not be entirely in operation at this point, but that may be an opportunity to look at that.
Well, while I was listening to comments, I've shot an email off to Jeff Kruger, so we'll start that conversation, and I'll try and understand better what the technical challenges, if any, are, and what we can do.
Yeah, great.
It was my understanding or my thinking that when we did this new site up at Highlands, somehow this piece of equipment was not back reinstalled or something, and so I think Jeff and I talked briefly to Phyllis about it. So I think they are aware of it. We just need to bring that loop back together.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you. Thank you for
So I
bringing that.
suggested Sheldon come here.
Is it a 12-volt system or is it a 120? Do you need, what kind of power do you need for it?
Well, the one I saw required 120, but as far as I know, the 120 goes into
An inverter.
a power supply,
Right.
and I'm sure it probably operates on 12 volts.
Right. Thanks for bringing
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for
I'll
listening.
make sure everybody knows how to find you.
Public comments, anybody else wishing to speak? Yes?
Thank you all for the opportunity to speak real quickly. My name is Carl Adam. I'm the president of the Aspen Fire Protection District. First and foremost, I'd like to say thank you to all of you for the stewardship that you do for our county. It's a wonderful place. It's also just come to my attention that we're a little bit late at the table in bringing this to your attention, so I apologize for that. I just am trying to open up a dialogue, if anything, here. The reason that I'm here is I think that there's a great opportunity for our citizens and for our community to increase safety and at the same time save a significant amount of money for the taxpayers. The Aspen Fire Protection District has of late undergone a fundamental change. We just had a very serious recruiting attempt. It's the most effort we've ever put into a recruiting class, and we got 3 recruits out of it. So it's really kind of come to focus that the volunteer model is probably not going to be sustainable in the long term for our organization. So what we're now starting to consider is a blend of a paid staff and the existing volunteer model that we have. As such, we think that there's a great opportunity to potentially combine our district with the Aspen Ambulance District. Some of the highlights that I'd like to bring to focus are enhanced public safety, by facilitating potentially quicker response times through the utilization of our facilities in Aspen and the Aspen Airport Business Center. We would allow rapid response times for ambulances basically anywhere that they need to go. It would allow for significant resource sharing. The integration would allow for cross-training, enhanced response protocols, and dynamic and agile response to emergencies, while once again better serving the public. Another item that is a highlight to me is fiduciary responsibility. It's an opportunity for us to save the taxpayers significant money. We have the infrastructure in place currently. It would not require the building of the ambulance district barn. This would be an opportunity to save the taxpayers $6 million in upfront costs, and the long-term potential savings would be astronomical. Additional benefits would include reduced traffic, reduced density in an already dense area. I believe you guys are already getting feedback from some of the citizenry up by the hospital that the buildings up there are getting very significant. And it would also reduce the construction. As I said at the start of this, I know that we're late. I apologize for that. I don't want this to become a political issue, but I would just love to open up some sort of dialogue, and I wanted to see if there's an opportunity for us to have a discussion, potentially a joint work session, just an opportunity to vet this before ground is broken at the ambulance district.
All right, well, thank you, and we did receive your letter, and I think we would be happy to meet with the Fire District Board. I think we would be happy to share our space needs assessment that we've just received. We'd be happy to share our budget. We'd be happy to share the ambulance district's response time, as well as where those responses come from. I think that would be very informative. And, you know, at that meeting, we would also like to see your plan, your budget, in terms of how you address this. But the voters have given us, the ambulance district, approval for a mill levy to move ahead to build the needed ambulance barn. And that does not preclude our ability to work with the fire district in the future. But our charge as a board of the ambulance district is to ensure that we have the continuity of professional, timely response needs when emergency calls for our citizens and for our visitors. And so we need to move ahead with our plans, but we invite you to sit down with us, discuss your plans once you have them in place, your budget, not only for the operations, but for the back office as well. And I think there's always opportunities down the road to work together.
Great. I appreciate that. How should I move forward with obtaining the information? From
We'll set up a time with staff for when we could put you on as a work session agenda item.
Through John Peacock.
Okay, that'd be fantastic.
That'd be great.
Well, thank you all so much for your time.
Thanks
I
for coming
appreciate
forward.
it.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming in, Carl.
Good to see you.
John?
And then I have one public comment I'd like to make. I'd like to invite Sarah Ott up, who is the new assistant manager for City of Aspen, and had a chance for her to tell us a little bit about herself. Welcome, Sarah.
Welcome.
Hello, thank you. It's been delightful. I've been here in the Valley now for 6 or 7 weeks, just getting oriented, and I've greatly enjoyed it. I've come here with 2 small children. I have a 6-year-old and 8-year-old that have joined me, as well as my husband. We're from Ohio originally, but have been making plans in our lives often to be this way professionally and personally. So I'm excited to be part of this community as we're getting started. And joining with Aspen, I've been working with our team there in the manager's office to work on our realignment of our organization with skills and talents. And I just wanted to share with you some of the areas I'll be handling. Please always feel free to pick up the phone, give me a call. John and I had some great conversations over the past few weeks. We spent quite a bit of time together, even today, getting to understand both the breadth and depth that you're charged with and making this community run. And I admire you and applaud you for standing up and taking those tasks on in the community. I'll be overseeing a variety of operations within the City of Aspen. Those include Parks and Recreation. It includes the finance operations of the city, information technology, Kids First, some things around purchasing. We're also going to be moving environmental health and sustainability out of the utilities department. I think that's an area where we continue wanting to focus at the City of Aspen and be able to give it some room to grow in its time, as well as focusing on both community and government relations for the organization. So I'm looking forward to, hopefully will be many productive conversations that we have at the staff level with your team and working with you as we continue to move things forward here in the community. And I'd be happy to hear any questions you have of me or any thoughts, comments.
Well, maybe, yeah.
I just want to thank you. Thank you for coming. This is great. This is a great opportunity now. And I'm in town a lot because I just live right over here. When I see you on the street, I'll know who you are. And
Sure.
we can meet and greet,
Absolutely.
and I can catch up with the kids.
Always say hi. I love that.
That's great. It's great to have you. Thanks for coming to our community.
Yeah, welcome. And I'm sure we'll be having further discussions with you. We do lots of joint ventures with the city on many different projects, so we look forward to working with you.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Take
Thanks
care.
for coming over.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, John.
Appreciate it. That was great.
Let's see. Yes.
You again.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Hi.
At yesterday's work session, you asked for further report on wildfire, so I brought my subject matter expert, Valerie McDonald, here to tell us to tell actually our viewers and you what we're doing and how to prepare for what we think might be an active wildfire season.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Valerie McDonald. I'm the Pickens County Emergency Manager. And 2 weeks ago today, I was in here telling you we had just had our first red flag warning day below 7,500 feet in Pickens County. The weather forecast at that time was for 2 weeks of hot, dry, and windy weather. The forecast was accurate, and now exactly 2 weeks later, all of Pickens County is in a red flag warning.
Entire West Slope.
Yes, that's true. As of noon today. So that's how it works. It's usually 2 weeks after they're there or we're there. So right on schedule. At the Public Safety Council meeting last week, Doug Paul from the Bureau of Land Management briefed the group on the state forecast. And for our region, the weather forecast for the next 30 days is hot, dry, and windy. Again, red flag warning situation, and red flag means extreme fire danger. If, and I say if, that forecast is accurate, fire restrictions may be warranted. That decision is not something that we take lightly. It's based on science. We look at the energy release components, the ERCs, and what we're essentially doing is measuring the moisture content of the fuels. Once we start getting up in the 90th percentile for 5 days, we would probably go into fire restriction. Again, it's based on science, not something we take lightly, not based on personal opinion. Stage 1 fire restrictions are more of a opportunity for us to get the word out to the public. Be alert, be aware, this is coming. It's not that restrictive, but we would just bombard the community with fire safety information. There have been numerous fire starts in our region already. Mesa County and Garfield County went into stage 1 fire restrictions this week. Tomorrow, the fire chiefs, the fire warden, emergency management, our partners at BLM, and the Forest Service, we're all going to meet to have a conversation about this so we can proceed in a coordinated manner. Part of that conversation as well, I know you'll ask this question, will have to do with fireworks. Both Joe and I have been in conversation with the Aspen Chamber in regards to their fireworks. You know, Debbie and Jennifer are seasoned professionals. They've been here before. No one wants to see the fireworks canceled. That said, they completely understand the public safety issues. Joe was going to talk to Brian Olson about the Snowmass fireworks and Scott Thompson with the Roaring Fork Club. So those decisions will be made day by day. We have to see what the weather forecast, what the weather actually does. We will continue to update the board and the public. And before I open it up for questions, I just wanted to hit on some basic wildfire emergency preparedness information. I don't mean to imply that we can stop or prevent wildfire starts or any other natural disaster for that matter, but I feel like this is a pretty bold statement, but we are prepared. Pickens County is prepared. Fire seasons last until we get the first snowfall. And we're back at it at the end of December, end of January, beginning of February. We meet with all our state, federal, regional partners, and we go over our annual operating plan for the next wildfire season. We review and we revise the plan so that everyone's aware of their role and responsibility for the following summer. All of our county, state, and federal agreements are in place. The county does participate and pay into the Division of Fire Prevention and Control, another state agency emergency fire fund. It's essentially a funding mechanism. If we had a wildfire in Pitkin County on private property, it's a avenue for us to be reimbursed for suppression costs. Fire, and lastly, this can't be overlooked. We are fortunate that we have very highly trained professional fire districts.
If I could just jump in here for a second. One of the greatest tools that we have to prevent any kind of out-of-control wildfire is the money that you guys gave me to use at a discretionary basis, and it's about $100,000. I think it's a little over that, isn't it, John?
We're right about that.
Right about that, which I have to say is unique, and you guys were visionary in doing this. Most sheriffs don't have that. So if there was a start of, say, 3 or 4 acres somewhere, instead of me coming to you and having to appropriate funds before we put into an aircraft attack of that fire, I have the ability to order that up knowing that the money's there and it's ready to pay. So that is something that I think we have that most jurisdictions don't have. So I think you guys deserve some credit for that. So back to Valerie.
When I talk to other emergency managers in our region, our situation is very unique that way. They're looking for money during the emergency, which really affects response. So thank you. Joe mentioned this yesterday, but public education and outreach is ongoing. I want to stress that wildfire prevention is everyone's responsibility. We want people to be aware and informed. A couple ways you can do that. I encourage everyone to sign up for our Pitkin County emergency alerts. You can do that at pickenalert.org. You can receive emergency information via phone, text, or email. If we can't contact you, we can't warn you, and we're talking about wildfire. If we need to evacuate you and you don't have a landline, we can't get to you unless you're signed up for Pitkin Alert. So please do that. The time to make an emergency plan is now. It's not a good idea to do that during an emergency. If you're a normal person, which I know we have a lot of people who aren't normal, but if you're a normal person, you're going to freeze during an emergency. There's a lot of great information on our website, pitkinwildfire.com. You can go on that website, download our action guide, or you can pick up a guide at the front desk of the sheriff's office. Good information on how to protect your property and your home, and what to do if we have a fire. What is your family emergency plan? What's your communication plan? Where are you going to meet? What are you going to take? What's in your 72-hour go bag in case you have 3 minutes to vacate? What's your plan for your animals? So there's a lot of good information, and again, the responsibility, it's everyone's responsibility. You need to be prepared before the emergency. And in closing, and I just can't miss an opportunity to say this, if you do get an evacuation, go early, go then. Do not wait, which is human nature. We need to let firefighters in there and give them the best chance to defend your property and do it safely.
And
Thanks,
I would
Valerie.
just add to that, excuse me, George, 1 second, that, I often get asked what's the biggest public safety concern in Pitkin County, and by far number 1 is probably our highway. Number 2 is wildfire. That's probably our biggest threat to life and property. And, I don't want to focus too much on fireworks, because that's what we seem to do on 4th of July, but it's more about how you keep and maintain your fire when you're in campsites, when you come to visit here. That's how we're going to get starts. It's either that or a dry lightning cycle that, thank God, we haven't gotten in yet. But let's not just focus on fireworks, because human starts via campfires is the other main start, and we're getting into that season now when people start to visit us. So I think we could
Can I
open
just
up
add to that, Troy, though, too? Please, if you're going to smoke in any situation, please put out your cigarettes properly. Don't flip them out your car window when you're driving up the pass or driving through Mid-Valley. That along the side of the highway with dry brush along the side of the highway. You might start small, might stay small, but it might not.
You're right, Patty. Anything welding
Yeah.
welding starts.
Chainsaws.
Chimeneas start fires. Cigarettes start fires. So I just think you need to be aware of anything that is 1,200 degrees that has a flame that you need to be careful about that.
Please. I think
So-
it may be beneficial for me to read these 9 sentences on exactly what a stage 1 is. It's not that restrictive. As Joe said yesterday, it's pretty much a warning shot to the community. Pay attention. 80% of fire starts are human caused. Stage 1, the following are prohibited: building, maintaining, attending, or using a fire or campfire except within a developed recreational and site or improved site. Next one has to do with smoking. Smoking, these are prohibited. Smoking except within an enclosed vehicle or building, a developed recreation site, or while stopped in an area at least 3 feet in diameter that is barren or cleared of all flammable material. And the last one is operating or using any internal, external combustion engine without a spark arresting device properly installed. So that's what stage 1 means.
Joey, back to your point about campfires. You know, as we know, about 85% of Pickens County is comprised of public lands under the jurisdictions of the BLM and the U.S. Forest Service. And so we're under a red flag warning. However, we have not yet seen any fire bans per se within BLM or the National Forests. I don't know if you can respond to that. It's and how I know you guys are in constant communication with those public agencies. Are you sort of alerting them in terms of our concerns as summer season?
We'll meet with them on Thursday, George. They're going to be in those meetings. And what we've run across in the past, our last fire ban was in 2011. Where we have run into problems is uniformity throughout our Tri-County area, or even through federal jurisdictions. BLM may put a ban in, Forest Service won't. So what I'd like to stress is that we need this uniformity. As I said yesterday, when you go camping, you don't see a bright yellow line that says Pitkin County and Eagle County. So people may not know there's a ban in effect, and we have struggled with that before. So I'll probably stress that if one goes, we all go.
Right, because we're all in the White River National Forest
Right.
for sure. We're all in the northwest region of the BLM, working out the same district office.
That's 100% right.
Yeah, all right, great, thank you. Greg?
Couple of things. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate this. We've all noticed how dry it is. Regarding the alerts, I'm just wondering, I know you've got a kind of an informal Twitter alert, because a lot of people are using Twitter now for communication. Is that going to become part of the, that's my first question. Let me get to the second one. I'll go down my list. Second one is I'd love to talk a little bit about mitigation. You look around our valley and you see places that just seem to be overgrown, certainly residential areas up and down. And I'm just wondering, where do we stand? You say we're prepared, but are we prepared in regard to actual fire mitigation, removing brush from homes? How good are we at doing that? That's the second question. And then finally, regarding, I saw two things coming back from a conference in Dillon the other day. There was a cigarette burn fire right next to the highway in Leadville. And it looked like that cigarette butt burned about 200 yards of highway next to the highway before they got it out. It was a fairly big patch, considering somebody tossed it out the window, and half an hour later, the perp probably never even knew they'd done it. They were long gone before it actually turned into a fire. So that's a critical thing. The last thing is, I know one of our adjoining counties is that Eagle is offering a free use of a grinder to grind up downed timber on your property. They'll come and park it in your neighborhood, and you can bring in and actually grind up to help people mitigate for fire. And I'm wondering if that's something we could consider offering at some
I
point.
think Valerie has a mitigation update from last
You've already
year.
done it?
Yeah, and let me just interrupt for a little bit, because we really invited Joe and Valerie here to just inform the public about the dangers, where we are in terms of a fire ban, a red flag ban right now. Some of these questions I think can come back to us in a regular work session. I don't think this is public comment. It's really not the appropriate time to drill down into this.
George, real quick, as far as mitigating on your property, you can call the Aspen Fire District, and they'll come out and do a quick plan on your property. So that's a really easy part of mitigation, not to go into the details of how you mitigate and what you need to mitigate, but you can call the Aspen Fire Department, and they'll somebody out and they'll talk with you about what you need to do on your property.
And,
So I guess
all
Patty,
4
in
districts
addition to
do that.
Snowmass and Basalt are
Snowmass and
offering
Basalt do the
same
same thing.
service. Yeah.
So again, it's just some closing comments, but it's just more for informing the public where we're at right now. Summer season's hit, visitors are coming in, people are camping. So let's just sort of limit that to
And in
raising
closing,
that
George,
awareness.
as I said yesterday, I want the public to know that I'll be conservative with this. I'm not willing to take a lot of chances. So if we're on the borderline, I'll probably go in the way of prevention rather than anything else.
Rachel?
Yeah, really briefly, it is up to the individual citizen and the individual private property owner to take care of their property. And so we've been, for years, I think, encouraging people to do that, and at various times having the type of grinder available and things like that. So, we've been getting the message out, but Pickens County cannot and does not force anyone to protect their own home. But we've done a lot of educational seminars. Don't store your firewood next to your house. Make sure you have that clearance, that there's no trees or branches touching your house, things like that. And they are very helpful, having that go bag ready with any medications or things you might need should there be an evacuation. And I just wanted to I know we have different climate than Arizona, but folks should be aware that there's a very large fire burning in Prescott now, and it tripled in size overnight. So going now to 18,000 acres or more than 28 square miles. So it's the entire West, and the resources that are available through the Forest Service and BLM become stretched with what they have to do in other states. So let's all be careful out there. Let's all follow the rules. And I would ask one further item from you guys. I know you're running a big ad on the 4th of July. What type of fireworks are prohibited, even if there wasn't a fire ban?
Anything that goes in the air and goes bang, either or, is prohibited.
Okay. So
That's a
basically,
great way
we
to
can have
say
If
the
it
fountains
flies-
on the ground,
If it
sparklers
flies or
with the
goes
kids.
bang, it's prohibited.
Okay, thank you very much. And that's whether there's a fire ban or not. So
That's right.
Thank you, folks.
So you can do snakes.
Snakes are allowed. Pat, you remember those, huh?
On concrete.
On concrete.
Only on concrete.
Great.
3-foot patch.
Well, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Valerie,
Thank
for coming
you so
in.
much, commissioners. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to
If
make
anything
any?
changes, you'll be the first to know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else wishing to make a public comment at this point? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment and bring it back to the board for commissioner comments. Patty?
I want to wish everybody a happy 4th of July. This will be our last public meeting before next Tuesday. And I want to invite everybody on Friday evening from 5 to 7, the Board of Commissioners, the Basalt Town Council, and the board's Healthy Rivers and Streams Board will be doing a public celebration and opening of our Whitewater Park, which starts at the upper Basalt Bridge with the new big metal structure artwork bug on the corner. Parking is very limited. It's from 5 to 7 with music and dancing and fun and thrills. The commissioners will possibly be all jumping in a raft together and riding through the new Whitewater Park. I think we're going to be the test group for the Whitewater rescue teams that are going to be out there. It's going to be really fun. Parking is very limited, so please either ride your bikes locally, take the bus. You can get a WeCycle there. I don't think you can. There's probably another WeCycle station over at Elk. Is there a close one?
Right on, I think School Street, right across from the fire station.
Okay,
Right.
so there's another one right there in that neighborhood, which would be perfect.
And then one in Elk Run across from the.
So there are some WeCycle opportunities, but it's a quick walk around across the old bridge by the 7-Eleven and up this street. So please, the public, come. We would love to see you all there.
Thanks, Patty. Other commissioner comments? Steve?
On the 4th of July, the parade starts at 11 again this year. It used to always start at 12, but you need to be there early, an hour earlier than you used to have to be able to be there. Also, today is the day when the Haute Route bicycle tour is going through town later this afternoon. So we should be on the lookout for 300 bicyclists going down Main Street with all the automobile traffic. And I guess down Highway 82 also. So just a word of warning, but also it's opportunity for the commissioners to kind of observe what it looks like since that wasn't our preferred route for them to go through town.
Thank you.
I have no other comments other than, like Patty and others, to wish people a happy 4th of July, a safe 4th of July, and to invite them to come down to the water park opening. I'm very excited about that.
Greg, anything?
I'm good.
Back to some of the earlier comments, when the sheriff was talking about, you're never really sure when you cross county borders. As I travel around the state, I'm always really glad and pleased when I see Pickens County, and because when you enter Pickens County, it's different from other counties, and to that end, I'm disappointed that the majority of the Eagle County Commissioners decided to approve the Ace Lane Tree Farm development down in the Mid-Valley. I think they were sold a bag of goods that won't come true by the hired guns of the developer. They were sold that this was going to be a transit-oriented development. It was going to provide very needed affordable housing. It was going to be environmentally friendly. It reminds me of the electorate in West Virginia and Kentucky who bought Trump's promise of bringing coal jobs back. The truth of the matter is, although it is near a transit-oriented BRT station, RAPTA does not have anywhere near the capacity to handle the over 300 residents that will be built there. In terms of affordable housing, they will certainly provide some affordable housing, which is needed, although many of those categories, much of that affordable housing is going to be designated RO, resident occupied, which is really higher end, not the category 2s and 3s that are really needed. In addition, with over 135,000 square foot of commercial space, it's actually going to be a net loss of housing in terms of trying to service all those businesses that will be there. So we'll actually see more people going up and down the valley just getting to work. So again, disappointed in that. It's unfortunate that the commissioners didn't see the difference between the Roaring Fork Valley, where we have a very constrained, limited highway, Highway 82, where the Mid-Valley is starting to look like Spear Boulevard with all the traffic lights, versus the Eagle Valley, where they have a interstate highway going through with interchanges and on and off ramps. Certainly a different scenario in terms of being able to accommodate such a large development. But again, that's why I'm always happy and pleased when I enter Pickens County, because I know the difference between Pickens County and the other counties.
George, I have to comment that my favorite is when you enter Pickens County at the top of Independence Pass. You come around that last hairpin and you're coming up towards the top of the pass, and there's that sun, and it always makes you think about being home again.
Right, exactly. Okay, with that, we'll move on. And let's see, we have a consent item. It's a single reading. It's the minutes of June 14th.
I move to approve.
Second?
Any further discussion?
I'll make a comment. There was one correction that Jeanette and I already did. It was just some cleanup of language at the bottom of page 2 and top of page 3. Thank you.
Got that? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next, we're going to go into our individual. Next we have an individual consideration item. This is a public hearing. It's one reading. It's a special event liquor license submitted by the Friends of the Aspen Animal Shelter.
And there's a familiar face.
Thanks for having me back.
Always.
Jeanette Jones, Clerk to the Board of County Commissioners. And what we are presenting to you today is a special event liquor permit, and it's for the Friends of the Aspen Animal Shelter, and it's for their annual event this year, which is going to be held on July 9th. And as it always is a treat to have Seth join us, I'll turn this time over to him and let him give you an overview of the event.
Great, thank you. Welcome.
Okay, well, thanks for having me again. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's all the same. Maybe you don't remember from previous years, so I'll give my spiel. But unfortunately, it's been our event on Sunday, July 9th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. is a free community event for the community, and we have ranging from restaurants Kenichi, Hotel Jerome, the Aspen Skiing Company has their mobile unit that serves food. It's a blast, and so there's bouncy house for kids, dunk tank for kids. The fire department's there, and the kids get with the help of a fire. What do you call a fire professional? They help them hold the hose and spray the hose out towards the snow dump. And we have adoptable cats and dogs, and it's an open house at the shelter. We have booths ranging from different dog food companies giving out treats. And the neat thing is this has grown. Each year it gets. I think it's always great, but it gets better and better in the sense that our nonprofit Friends of the Aspen Animal Shelter financially benefits more and more, because originally we started out 3 years ago as a free community event and we were just hoping to break even, and now thanks to sponsors, because they've seen how fun it is and they want to get their logos on there and help out and throw this event, this year we're actually walking away and going to net some good money to help neuter more dogs and medical care and all that sort of stuff. So I won't go through our whole list, but I will tell you that Only Natural Pet is a pet shop in town that they are our title sponsor. Then we have Josh Landis with Aspen Real Estate Company. He walks around town with his bulldogs, his English bulldogs. He's hosting the event, and he has sort of he calls it a VIB tent, very important bulldogs. And people come in and they can eat and drink and hang out with his dogs. And then ranging from a bunch of other sponsors, and Ish Arbor with All Valley Maintenance and Mechanical sponsors. So it's grown, it's fun, and it feels good that the entire community, locals and tourists alike, are invited for free. There's no money changing hands, and the money comes from, as I was stating, sponsors. So it seems like a good model we've developed, and we originally were doing it one time, give back to the community, but then let's bring Cesar Millan or Bernadette Peters or John Oates, and let's keep making money. But now it's really neat. We're making money while we're giving back. So
I'll just add that you can donate when you get there.
Yes.
And you can buy some swag from the Friends of the Animal Shelter. But there's also the dog wash.
Yes.
It's the one time that Yuffie gets her bath. She's very good about it. So yeah, so Yuffie goes back to visit her friends. So it's a great event. It's really fun. We hope to see everybody there.
Other questions or comments? Rachel?
Yeah, I have a comment. And first, I'd like to thank you for your many years of dedication and support and, creation of the animal shelter in so many ways. And so this comment is more broad about liquor license applications as opposed to just yours. But reading this again, it really made me think, is there a way to have a little bit more of an expedited permit for events that are annual events at the same location, and when there haven't been complaints or charges in the past? And I don't mean to short circuit the process in any way, especially, you'd have to take into account there been a measure of expansion or anything like that. But as a board, we regularly get requests for rebate of fees through our contingency fund for nonprofits who are holding these events, and they come up every year. And so I've just wondered, is there a way to reduce that expense versus a totally new time event when the special event committee is looking at all these new factors for the first time and working out all the appropriate arrangements? And so I'll just leave it there. It's just something for consideration. But again, we always get the request afterwards, can we reimburse the fees to the community development department? And they're kind of the standard fees. And I've just wondered, is there something that is a little bit of a shortcut or a repeat permit fee for an event that really hasn't changed, is in the same location? Now, if it's the same amount of staff work, then obviously our philosophy of pay it your own way goes and not being subsidized. But I just thought we should take a look at that.
And I have a question too, though. But liquor licenses have to come before the board at a public hearing, correct?
Yeah.
So just to clarify that difference.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't short circuit the liquor license approvals, but
we're just talking about the event permitting.
The event permitting, and it's just a thought.
Yeah, that's something we can, at some point, we have a discussion with ComDev in terms of their staff time and resources. But there's two different issues. The permitting, the statutory requirement for liquor license needs to come before us for public notice, and then just internally how we address that.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Thank you.
So that being said, can I make a motion to approve?
Certainly.
Public hearing.
Yeah, I'll do that. But yeah, you can make a motion.
I will make a motion to approve.
Second.
This is a public hearing. Anybody wishing to make any comments on this? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any further discussion?
Just want to make sure that no animals are receiving alcohol at this event.
No, there's no drunk dog walking either. So,
But cats might be different.
and I have to. It's such a kid-friendly event that it's. I mean, yeah, we have alcohol there, but I don't even notice. It doesn't feel like an adult party, and everybody's drinking. That's why I always laugh when I come to this. We have to do it for it's the rule, but it doesn't revolve around alcohol, and it's just a bunch of people having innocent,
fun.
pure fun. And if I might, I don't want to keep going, but I just want to thank Elizabeth Schlossberg with EKS Events for the past 3 years has produced this event with us and for us, and she's really generous and gives a lot of their time and their resources, and it would not be happening without EKS Events.
All right, thank you. So I think we're all set.
Thanks, guys. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you. Got to have the vote.
We need to vote.
We didn't vote?
No.
Oh, I interrupted. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now you're all set.
Oh, thanks. I brought flyers, but I handed them out earlier. Unfortunately, so I don't have enough for everyone.
Did you see if the library has a place to post?
Oh, well, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Anybody want one?
I'm going to be
I'm
there.
good.
I'm going to be out of town that weekend.
Take one. Thanks,
I'm
Seth.
always there. But yeah, the library can probably post for you. Perfect.
Thank you.
You got to bring the kids.
All right, we're going to move on to our individual consideration items. These are first readings set for public hearings on July 12th. The first is a resolution providing supplemental appropriations to the 2017 budget, the second quarter.
I'm Connie Baker, Picken County Budget Director, presenting a resolution providing supplemental appropriations to the 2017 budget. Yesterday, department heads from 10 different areas were here to present supplemental requests to you, and we went through those in some detail for these requests. Today is the first reading of the resolution for actually putting these requests into our budget. It would impact the budget with an increase in expenditures of $513,000, offset by $135,000 in revenue, for a net increase to the budget of $378,000. There were 10 requests. 2 for full-time ongoing positions, one of those a finance analyst in the finance department, a finance specialist shared by Human Services and Public Health. Then there was an engineering intern for the summer, funding for the Buttermilk Parking Management Plan, a scanning project for community development, refurbishing the Health and Human Services data project, or data closet, then appropriating a $100,000 GOCO grant in the Open Space and Trails Fund, adding additional budget for the airport fuel tank replacement, library blackout curtains and benches, and then last, a carry forward of funds in the Healthy Community Fund for Aspen Family Connections. So quite wide-ranging across many different funds of the county. Do you have any questions on any of these requests before voting to approve?
Questions, Rachel, or
We
comments?
detailed these very thoroughly yesterday at our work session, and so I would prefer to have more detail at second reading and just move it forward today.
On that note, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Connie.
Thank you.
Next is an ordinance amending the Ruby subdivision conservation easement and agreement.
Hi, I'm Dale Will with Pitkin County Open Space, and Paul is handing out example of what we want to do with this conservation easement. Jeanette informed me that we need to have these attached to ordinances when they come in. She was nice enough to let this slip and let us hand carry this one in. This is a pretty simple issue that came about as a result of kind of a drafting omission in a conservation easement that Pitkin County acquired as a result of the approvals for the Ruby subdivision right over here on Hunter Creek. overall, the Open Space Department is quite pleased with that conservation easement because it provided the way that the Hunter Creek Trail extension down from the Longhouse down to the Rio Grande was able to be completed. So overall, it's working really well. The reason this situation has arisen is that the conservation easement is silent on underground utilities, and on one of these lots where the conservation easement applies to the upper portion of the lot, there's also a city water main, and this is lot number 2. Are we going to...
Yeah, let's see if I can...
Maybe we can get a map going on here. But so there's a pre-existing water main on the lot. The lot's been sold. The new owners are trying to develop the lot consistent with the conservation easement, and they have to replace a section of the old water main. And the conservation easement prohibits above-ground utilities, is silent on underground ones. So I got involved talking to the council for the new owner of Lot 2, and we agreed that the most sensible thing to do with this is to just amend this easement to acknowledge that the repair and maintenance of pre-existing underground utilities is consistent with the easement. Hence, we propose adding that sentence to the conservation easement. I think any other course of action for the county would be problematic since they've got something underground. It was acknowledged in the plats for this subdivision that there was a water main on Lot 2. Unfortunately, the plat, the survey work was not accurate, and it didn't accurately show the location of the water main. So after a fair amount of discussion, we concluded that adding this one sentence to the conservation easement will fix this problem forevermore without the need to go locate the full extent of this pre-existing line where it crossed Lot 2. So what Paul's handed out shows in section 4.8 utilities language in this conservation easement. We've got new language shown in red. We want to add this sentence: maintenance, repair, and replacement of underground utilities existing as of the date of the conveyance is permissible. And that essentially cleans up an omission in the original drafting of the easement. So Paul and I took this package to the Open Space and Trails Board pursuant to our conservation easement amendment policy. These easements are granted in perpetuity. They're fairly complicated documents, and we do anticipate that from time to time we'll need to amend them. The policy requires that first we consult with the Open Space and Trails Board. They unanimously recommend that you approve this amendment, and staff would request that you do the same and set this for public hearing since we do need an ordinance to accomplish it.
Great, thanks, Dale. Questions for Dale or Paul?
I'm very familiar with this whole parcel. For many years we talked about it, so glad to be cleaning it up.
Now that we have a map up, you can see on Lot 2 in the upper right-hand side of the subdivision, this water line is in this area. They put a conservation easement on this area above the salvation ditch because it's a pretty nice sort of wild pocket of land up there.
Great habitat area.
Right. And so we're simply saying if they need to work on the water main that's there, that's allowable.
And I'm Paul Holsinger, the Conservation Easement Administrator for Open Space and Trails. Just to clarify what it looks like is there's an existing utility line here that was represented on the plat referenced in the conservation easement, and the plat actually shows it off to the, I think it's off to the south of where this actually is. So trying to clarify it so they can make the necessary improvements.
All right, thanks. Any other questions or comments? Steve?
I would move to approve the ordinance amending the Ruby subdivision conservation easement and agreement on first reading, set for second reading on July 12th.
Second.
Any further discussion? See none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Looks like you're up next, Paul, so don't go far.
Anywhere, Paul.
The next is an ordinance amending the Fender Middle Ranch Conservation Easement, AKA Deadwood Ranch. This is to be continued to July 12th. Why is that?
And that was also the result of us not having the final version of the proposed amended deed available to attach. And in discussions with Jeanette, she wanted us to wait until we were able to have that available at first reading. There's some complicated language that we're working out in that, and we'll bring it back when we have the agreement between our office and John and everyone as to the way the deed should look when it's done.
All right, so I would accept the motion to continue this item to July 12th.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is an ordinance accepting the Second Amendment to the Vested Property Rights Agreement, CDPUD Plan Development Agreement, Historic Covenant, and Agricultural Building Covenant for the Deadwood Ranch.
Paul just took it down. I was going to have him leave the map up, but give me a sec. So this is Suzanne Wolf for Community Development. This is a follow-up item to an approval that was granted to the Deadwood Ranch at the end of 2016 after a long process of amendments, I think you all remember. And Paul and I had intended to tag team the amendment to the conservation easement with the amendment to this agreement. But again, both of these documents just need to be completed. When completed, everything will be recorded together, the amendment to the conservation easement, this agreement, and the amended conservation development PUD plan for Deadwood. So we're just trying to put all these final pieces together. To finalize all of those approvals. And in one more second, I should be able to show you where we are. Well, there's the property off of West Soapers Creek Road. But so anyways, the formal title for the agreement that's in front of you is the Second Amendment to the Vested Property Rights Agreement, CDPUD Plan Development Agreement, Historic Covenant, and Agricultural Building Covenant for Deadwood Parcel. This being the Second Amendment, they've already had two of these. We basically combined all of the agreements that came out of that CDPUD review into one document to move forward. So again, this based on the changes that were made from Resolution 147, 2016, they required an amendment to this document, which is what is in front of you now for acceptance. If you want any more detail on what's included in that, I'm happy to do that. But otherwise, again, it's just sort of a follow-up item to the approval. This is first reading and set for second reading on July 12th.
Thanks, Suzanne. I just have one question. I recall that when we did this approval with to transfer the additional floor area, we gave the applicant two different options in terms of how they were going to utilize that. One was if they wanted to increase the ranch house size. If they were to do that, they were going to decrease the main house size. Have they responded, or do we know which option they've decided to use, or does it matter to us?
I don't think it matters at this point. That language was incorporated in the resolution, and I think it remains open to them.
Okay.
Their next step, process-wise, with us will be to come in with a site plan review for the actual buildings that they're going to build, the main house and whatnot, those buildings. So I think it's sort of a further step for them if they determine how they're going to proceed with that.
Okay. Any other questions at this point for Suzanne? Seeing none, I'd accept the motion.
To approve and set for second reading and public hearing on July the 12th.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, Suzanne.
Thanks, Suzanne.
Thank you.
see, we're going on to our next individual consideration item. This is a public hearing. It's our second reading. It's a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Aspen for the Buttermilk Parking Management Plan.
Great. I'm Brian Pettit. I'm the Public Works Director. I'm here with Mitch Ozier from the City of Aspen. He's the Parking Director. And we're here to talk about what we've talked about before, which is the Buttermilk parking lot and better utilizing that parking area during the summer months when Buttermilk is closed. And I don't know if the board wants me to go through the whole presentation with the map and everything, or are you fairly familiar with what?
Well, it's more for the public, so maybe an abbreviated presentation.
With the map up would be great.
Okay. We can do that while she's doing.
Fixing the mics.
It's definitely not Independence Pass, so I was looking through the files. So these are county-owned lots. They were condemned as part of the Highway 82 expansion, and were dedicated to the use for access to transit or access to recreational trails in Pitkin County. But a lot of time has passed. The county has gotten full ownership of these lots from CDOT, and we can better utilize these lots and still allow transit parking and recreational parking to occur. Anything we talk about today will not preclude those uses. If those uses extend beyond the appropriate amount of spaces, we will change the appropriation to meet that need. So if you look at the map here, and the best way to talk about this is in terms of the letters, which is Lot A is closest to Highway 82, and the upper part of this map is north, lower part south, but right along Owl Creek Road, Lot A would be used for transit parking and day parking, and that would continue to be free for people to park there. We would delineate that lot through the use of jersey barriers and plastic barriers that would be filled with water and moved in the springtime and out in the winter. Lot B would be used for $6 a day parking for up to 96 hours. This would allow people to park in there for 4 days. We could arrange for special event parking to occur in there as long as they prepaid. The management plan that we've drawn up has said they could rent for up to 70% of Lot B's spaces. We have many calls for this already. Lot C designates the commercial and construction staging area. I have to look at the plan, which is, this would be for up to 4 parking spaces for commercial purposes. We have a lot of need in the community for people to stage heavy pieces of equipment, large trucks that we'd rather not be going in and out of town. This would be $40 a day, and then we have pricing that ramps up if they were able to pay for a season. We have a lot of interest in this as well for commercial and construction staging. Lot D delineates people that would want to access Sky Mountain Park. This would be free day parking, and they could access the trail that goes to Sky Mountain Park along Owl Creek Road, and this would be sectioned completely off by jersey barriers, and the access to this lot would be the road that runs right along Lot D. I've worked closely with Mitch. He approaches his council on the 10th of this month to review this plan. Our IGA would have an enforcement officer from the parking department out there on a daily basis to enforce the parking restrictions. Lot B, the $6 a day parking would be a metered parking area just like you have downtown. These would be solar powered meters. There would be 2 of them, and we would have them placed as soon as possible after we get authorization. Lot C would be a permitted situation where people would actually approach the parking department, get a permit, and put that in their on their dash, and they would be allowed to use that lot through a permit. We would make sure that Lot C, in all the lots, that there was no camping allowed, that there's no businesses being operated out of there, and that was the last thing. And that there's no obnoxious activities going on, that there's no smells, that they're keeping their spaces clean. And but our primary concern was camping. We still have that problem actually today out there. So we hope to clean up the use of these lots and make it more useful for the community. There is a lot of interest in this plan, and I look forward to working with the City of Aspen on a needed parking area. We always said that this will be a test, and we'll see how it goes, and we'll be evaluating the success of this year and be getting back to the board in the fall. If this is successful, we will need to go back to the Planning and Zoning Commission to potentially rework the Western Maroon Plan and have an amendment to that to allow this activity to occur.
Patty?
Yeah, that's what I was going to stress again for the public, is this is, we're going to try this out, but I'd like to give this another year, because we really won't get this up and running until the end of the summer season. So we may need to take a little longer to before we can really evaluate. And I don't have a problem doing that. I'd rather evaluate it on a full test run than a partial test run. But I think the public needs to also understand that if we see a growing need, which we would like to, for commuter parking out there so people can stop there and get on the bus and not have to go through the roundabout quagmire in the days and evenings, we'll adjust that boundary line. The same thing we will do for the recreational parking at the very end and anything in between. So I think the public needs to help us with that, and if the public has any advice, opinions, positives, suggestions, or maybe not so positive suggestions, that we're open to that.
Great, thank you.
Steve?
Brian, how will people know when they're going from Part B into Part A, for instance?
There'll be an abundant amount of signage, for one thing, and I think the challenge is to make it as clear and concise as possible. But between the lots, for instance, Lot A and B, the highlighted line will be a Jersey barrier that channels people into one entrance.
So driving into Lot A, which I've done before,
yes,
to go catch a raft bus there will be one way you'll go through Lot B, maybe down one of the aisles and
correct,
through breaking the Jersey barrier.
Correct. And then there'll be appropriate signage on either side of that entry that delineates the use of that lot. Lot B will be signed right when you enter the lot. And the same thing between Lot C and Lot D. Lot C will be signed appropriately. And again, Lot D will be completely sectioned off because it has its own entrance off of the street right next to it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
Questions, comments? Rachel?
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to say, I agree with Patty in terms of the longer-term review, but if anything short-term or more immediate strikes us, it needs to be addressed. Certainly feel free to bring it back. And, as I said before, I think that we're going to have to take a little bit of a look at the landscaping, the appearance of this as time goes forward. I understand the need for the movable walls, but there's almost nothing on Highway 82 that we don't take seriously in terms of the west of Aspen, west of Maroon plan, and then just visuals along the Highway 82. I know the city's put a lot of work into planting trees along the bicycle path and things like that to make it a much more enjoyable experience. So we do have to bear that in mind, but otherwise I'm very happy to move this forward.
Thank you.
Greg?
Just wanted to say I talked to a contractor yesterday who's very excited about what you're doing out there. I still have a couple questions just regarding A and D. Say if hypothetically I'm coming into town, I decide to either take the bus or ride my bike in, I can park in Lot A. As long as I'm gone within 12 hours or 23 hours, or I'm just wondering, it's a day parking. So, but how are we going to know what people are actually doing? If I ride my bike to the Maroon Bells instead of go to town to a meeting, am I still legal in Lot A?
Yeah, I mean, as far as we're concerned, that Lot A would be used for some form of mobile transportation. So I'm okay with a bus and I'm okay with a bicycle. Anything but a car, as we all know, past that point. And that's something we'll work with together. I mean, Brian and I have a great relationship, and we know this is going to be work in progress, and we'll be talking on the phone on a regular basis, understanding are we on the same wavelength, and we're going to have to make some minor modifications as we learn what people do and don't do. But our goal here, at least from the city's point of view, is, we want less cars coming into town. And if someone takes a bike and goes to Maroon Bells, we're fine with that. They're not driving a car past that point, and that's what's important from our point of view.
Excellent, thanks.
But just to clarify that, though, parking area A, those 50 spaces were specifically geared towards RAFTA and transit. And similar to the other RAFTA transit park and rides, those lots are just for parking for transit. They're not even used or allowable use for carpooling and leave cars there. It's the idea that you go to a park and ride, you park, and you hop on the bus. So to Greg's point, it seems like there's still plenty of opportunities for people who want to park and ride a bike or access trails or wherever to utilize parking area D. But I don't want to see parking area A. If anything, I want to see parking area A in the next couple of years expand, as hopefully we'll capture more people before they hit the roundabout and get on our buses, similar to what the city of Aspen is looking at in terms of their mobility labs. The Intercept lot is certainly an opportunity, and we're putting in a lot of money in terms of improving that. This area is ideal to capture people from snowmass, residents, and from visitors. So I want to make sure that we distinguish the use for specifically mass transit and then other opportunities for locals to be able to utilize bikes.
Can I clarify that?
Point taken.
When we're talking commuter parking, is it specifically reserved for RAFTA use, or couldn't you stop and carpool there, and couldn't you stop and ride your bike there, or couldn't you park and walk into town from there?
Yeah, it's an enforcement challenge, and because I think some people do commute on their bike. They'll commute to Buttermilk, they get on their bike and ride into town, and I think that's an appropriate use. The challenge with enforcement is we're just going to be looking at cars on a daily basis. And sometimes we're not there to see whether they hop on the bus or get on a bike or carpool. So there's an enforcement challenge with designating exactly what a person's doing when they park in there. But I agree with you. If we have a problem with people having availability to park to get on the bus, I think we expand the parking. If they're parking there on a daily basis, that's what we're going to have to judge against.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify, there's still opportunities for people who commute and want to use their bike because you've got parking area D available.
Yeah, correct.
But I just think the main thing for me is we want to get cars there. We want to get people in and out of town, whether they're going either direction, going to the ABC or going into town. We want to get those cars in a consolidated spot so they're not on the highway. The other thing I wanted to just add, and Greg, I'm going to bring it up. I still want to at some time look at that bike connection on that side of the road between the Buttermilk parking lot and the underpass at the Maroon Creek Club. Okay. I know we're looking at an underpass, pedestrian underpass at Owl Creek, but I think we need to look at that for public safety issues, but that could be years down the line, and I'd just like to see the feasibility. Talk me out of this is what I'm asking you to do.
Okay. I was just going to add to that, honestly, it doesn't seem like it would be that big a deal, and if people are going to be parking to bike into town, it's one way of keeping them from having to cross the highway.
Or bike to the schools, and
right,
get the traffic off that quagmire.
Yeah, just if you want to go to points west, that's the side of the road to be on. It'd be nice not to have to cross the highway.
Okay, thanks. Rachel?
Yeah, thanks again for being here, and I realize there's I believe a second reading that still needs to occur at the city side?
No, just one reading.
Just one more reading?
Because we're doing it as an IGA versus, so.
Okay. Well, what I was going to suggest is that I think that with the Glenwood Springs Bridge closure, if we have this up and running before then, which seems to be the goal,
which will be,
I think that it'd be wise to perhaps advertise the availability of this lot to construction crews and contractors more in the Glenwood Springs Post paper or maybe even the Rifle Telegram. I don't know how else to perhaps reach those folks. I think the city's been doing some work and others to try to minimize. But if, you know, you can park the contractor's main vehicle up here and people can ride the bus up, that would do a lot. So I think we should do all that we can until it's full.
That's a good idea.
Exactly.
Promoting it as an alternative. And even for that matter, I don't know if we're allowed to have overnight parking at Brush Creek Intercept Lot. But that might be nice to ask CDOT if there could be a waiver to allow overnight parking, again, for vehicles that are on the Upper Valley work side. So that might be something we can work on before, again, the bridge closure happens.
Great, thank
No
you. We'll
camping.
check into that.
Thank you.
Good, great point. Great point.
Good idea.
This is a public hearing. Anybody wishing to make any comments? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing.
I will make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
I just want to say, I think this is a great plan. It's always been a very underutilized lot, and not only to be able to expand the use of it's great, and to address some of the concerns that we're seeing even without the Grand Avenue Bridge in terms of the construction traffic coming in and out. If we can capture some of those people ahead of time and make it easier for them to get to their job sites without bringing in their large trucks, I think that's great. So. Good plan. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Thanks for doing
Mitch.
it. Thanks.
Our pleasure.
Thanks.
So we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
While you're here, Mitch, just a quick aside question. Castle Creek Bridge. Last year you had a sort of an experiment where you put some barriers in there to expand that for bicyclists. It seemed like it was a success. I didn't notice yesterday, but last week I noticed you had, instead of the barricade there, you had pillars, which made it just impossible for any use. So I didn't quite understand if the pillars are still there, if you're going to remove them and put a barricade back in to allow bicyclists to utilize
My understanding is the plan is to expand the bridge and build a barrier in the spring of 2018. I will check, though, with what they're doing. I think they have the bollards there today so that to educate the drivers that that's where it's going to be in the spring of 18. But I'll follow through on that and get back to you.
Yeah, because it seems like it was very successful last year. You know, for us who would bicycle in and out, you had a separation between the pedestrians and the bicyclists, and now you don't have that separation. So it's
I'll
sort
get back to you. A
of new
point.
space, wasted space.
I understand that their plan was to go forward this year, but they had trouble with getting contractors. They sent out a
Correct. It was a bigger project than
yeah, because they're
nobody
going
wanted
to
to
do
bid.
some changes at the S curve with some, I don't know, changes in the island and the curve.
correct.
So it'd be nice to better utilize it again in the interim.
I will pass that on to the engineering department
Great, thank you.
right away.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes our regular agenda items. We're on to open discussion. And it looks like right now the main one, unless, John, do you have any other open discussion?
No, just a CCI.
So CCI legislative issues.
Yeah, so this is a follow-up to an open discussion that we had in a previous work session. This Friday, I believe, is the due date. And Kara, do you want to join us up here to fill in the gap? So I'm going to ask Kara to join us, as she's been really bird-dogging these issues for us. But this Friday is the due date for CCI's legislative issues. This is our first crack at proposing legislative issues that we would like the CCI membership to consider for advocacy in the next legislative session. This is really the first bite at the apple. It goes through a review and vetting process that probably Rachel or Steve would be better suited to talk about, but I know it's a multi-step process. But the first step in that is really for counties to identify legislative issues that they'd like to propose and to prioritize those. In our previous meeting, the board had identified 5 issues, and those 5 issues were water rights legislation, transportation funding, county authority to issue business licenses, statewide affordable housing, and then funding for aquatic species monitoring and removal. As of this morning, We have one staff recommendation, and that came through Human Services through Nan Sundin. And what it is would be to propose the elimination of a requirement that we have a citizens review panel for complaints that are made about caseworkers. And what's at issue here is we operate under a legislative requirement that we not only have a citizens review panel, but that we have a grievance process that has a defined escalation if there's a complaint to be made, where it's made first, where it escalates to if they're not satisfied, ultimately to a citizens review panel. And that requirement has been in place since the 1990s, and we have always had those policies and processes in place. We've never used the citizens review panel. On top of that, a few years ago, an ombudsman position was created at the state level to deal with these same complaints. And so what they're finding at the statewide level is that no counties have actually used the citizen review panel. So all counties are appointing citizens, and they're just never meeting. And so we had never utilized it before the ombudsman, and now we think it's even less likely because it would go through the ombudsman process first with the state before going to the citizen review panel that it would ever be used, and we're still appointing these boards and maintaining them. So there is one suggestion that we propose the elimination of that requirement, or to make it optional for counties to have that citizen review.
All right. So Rachel or Steve, what's the process? We can present as many different initiatives or ideas that we
Yeah, you kind of can, but there's only so much staff capacity at the end of the day at CCI. And the process is that they will take all that are suggested by various counties and shop them around through their district meetings that are held in August in different regions of the state, just kind of informational, no thumbs up or thumbs down questions. Then in the fall, they have a series of 2 meetings. The first is usually September, the second is October, no exact dates yet. The first one, again, is information, questions, comments, and staff of CCI does a certain amount of research to gauge the difficulty level, likelihood of finding sponsors, kind of weed them out a little to say, hey, this one could be changed administratively, it doesn't take legislation, things like that. And then the final meeting in October is when they will select their final legislative agenda. Items that are brought in or introduced by other legislators later are evaluated by CCI members to support, stay neutral, or oppose. But the CCI will have its own legislative agenda that they try to advance by finding sponsors and working it through. And so they start to narrow it down saying, hey, we only have so much capacity. Let's be real here, folks. And people kind of sometimes will pull theirs back out and say, no, this isn't as important to us. So there's quote, no real limit, but I do think it's worth realizing that they can be spread around a little bit. And if you allow me to continue, I've thought a lot about these as we go forward. And the affordable housing bill that failed last time was a doubling of the recording fees to go to CHAFA. It created about $11 million. It was fought by the home builders and the real estate community. The sponsor, I believe, is doing some work with them to try to, see if there's middle ground over the summer. I don't think that would be as valuable to submit from a county like Pitkin County as coming from someplace like Grand, which expressed a lot of interest before and actually went down to testify on the bill. So we're hoping they would perhaps do that one. The business licensing, it's just kind of too big an issue. It starts to become, are we set up to do a business licensing department and renewals of those licenses? And, I was thinking a little it could help with the tree cutting companies and have some greater standards, but if they're coming from another county that doesn't require a business license, do we say you can't do business in our county without a business license? And it just gets very complex. So I think that's kind of too big and not as pressing an issue for us.
I agree.
The one I was thinking is fairly straightforward and I think is valuable and seem to have a tremendous amount of support across the board, would be the transportation funding, and to request the CCI work to find a sponsor to submit a bill, to submit a public initiative for the 2018 ballot, that I would start with the exact same bill that was defeated on party line votes in the Senate Finance Committee, and just say, we need the transportation funding. These were the 50 different groups that weighed in support of this type of measure, knowing it would, get massaged and changed a little once it's actually introduced to see what could pass. But I think that putting transportation funding would be a very valuable one, and again, relatively simple. We'd like the same language to start with that was in the Senate bill last year. I have sent around a concept paper to you guys earlier, a few days ago, about the potential water rights legislation that I'd like to see to create a new water right. I've received some feedback of both language improvements and potential issues that'll come up from John Ely and from QQ, and I've tried to incorporate those into a second draft. I don't know that that's an issue CCI will take up, but I think it'd be very, very valuable feedback and information going through the district meetings and having that discussion kind of started. A bigger water rights issue like that, it would take several sessions to get through at the most, but you have to start somewhere. And then if we did the human service ones, I think that would be 3 from Pitkin County. That might be enough. That might be a legitimate amount.
What do you think about the funding for the aquatic species?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. I think that would be a good one to enter as well and say that we need this. It's starting to inhibit recreational activities in more areas than ours in terms of flat water recreation. I think there would be support. I can see it later getting flipped into a larger Colorado Parks and Wildlife bill, but at least to submit it as a broken out single issue item makes a lot of sense to me, because it was the potential of raising the fees for elk and deer hunting that kind of killed the overall concept. And so I think you're right. That would give us 4 that we're putting in, and maybe 1 that we're pulling later if there's not enough broader support.
All right. How's that sound to the board?
Sounds good to me.
And I would concur with what Rachel has said, and putting an idea for legislation out here right now, like the water one, knowing that it's not going to get through, but it is still as valuable in terms of education of the other commissioners across the state. And ultimately, they're not going to vote for it if it's a controversial one, but still, it's an educational piece in the meantime that's worthwhile doing.
That's kind of how
also, they'll have probably 20 to 30 bills or proposals out there, and they're only going to end up accepting 10 or 11 of them probably. Mm-hmm. So most of the ones they end up not taking as a legislative priority, but so that just gives an idea of the odds. We can put out more than we expect they will end up carrying, and it's okay to do that.
Okay, Greg?
I'd love to just bring up the possibility, maybe it gets tied in with the aquatic nuisance species, and it's a wildlife issue. And, I know CDOT and Parks and Wildlife now are working together with counties. Mostly it's our district mainly where most of the wildlife collisions with vehicles and casualties occur in the state, and it's becoming a big issue as our population grows. We're seeing more of a problem. And I'm just wondering if we could mention it, bring it up, thinking that it's, somewhere down the road this is going to become a bigger issue. Maybe some other counties would do the same.
Yeah, you have to have a kind of a legislative request of what law you'd like to change or new law you'd like to see put in place. And CDOT is hosting, I'm not sure exact date, of a transportation wildlife interface, very large session, and I forward that on to Gary Tenenbaum, and Gary is sending some staffers to that. They have very limited funds right now, but
One that was last week, or even another one?
I think it was the one that was last week,
yeah.
and so I don't know what the ask would be. You know, you have to list who are going to be the opposers, who are going to be the supporters.
Right. So we're not ready for that one yet.
I don't think we're quite ready for that, but I think that that is something that almost is more administrative to continue to work with them.
The only place where we might consider mentioning it, I think, would be within the transportation funding, because this is infrastructure that's being proposed for
So
safety
you could
improvements
say
where there are collisions. And that may be appropriate as an example of infrastructure that should be funded with increased transportation.
That's a great way to work that in, John. I really like that. So
sounds good.
That we could do that. The other item is, we had talked about funding for the energy office, but again, given the makeup of CCI, you're not going to see that accepted and brought forward as a legislative financial push unless it was just the new Office of Oil and Gas Development. So, there's some that, I'm interested in, but it's also not the right group to take it through.
Also, on the funding for the energy office, I think that CC4CA very likely will be bringing something forward for that.
Yeah, then CCI will evaluate whether to support, oppose, or stay neutral at that time.
So the next thing that I think we would want to get input from the board on is we do have to put these in order of priority, and maybe for the sake of smoothing the conversation, I'll take a crack at, based on what I've heard so far, how that order might come out. What I heard was we want to introduce the water rights legislation, but we don't have a high expectation that at this first bite at the apple that it would be. So it sounds to me like we'll have 4 issues, and that might be number 4 as an opportunity to introduce it. On the transportation funding, what I was hearing was that there was a lot of potential bipartisan support for that, and it covers a couple of different interests that we might have, or a few different interests in terms of safety and environment, as well as capacity, and that may be one to place right at the top of our list, since there is a high level of feasibility. So I'm hearing that might be the number 1 issue. Then in terms of the business licenses and housing, we said that those are not going to be part of our priorities at this point, although they still remain important issues. Then we have the human services and the funding for aquatic species. Those were the 2 I was probably having the hardest time placing in order. They would either end up as 2 or 3. Right now.
Yeah, I don't think it matters really 2 or 3. I believe it or not, even though it was one we kind of almost forgot, I think the aquatic species funding is going to be critical for us, especially with the use at Rudai. But I also think it might be one we can actually get somewhere with, I think, because it is so critically important, and it's not a huge impact. And then the human health services is almost a common sense. We're not using it. Let's see what other counties are doing or using. And since there's other opportunities out there that are obviously doing the job of this group, that maybe that's one that would also be an easy slide. But
so maybe put the human
service second.
Oh, I
was saying aquatic species second.
Aquatic species second.
Yeah.
I think transportation, aquatic species, human health services, the human services, and then the water. So that would be 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that the human services one is something that, it's kind of persisted this way for a while, and if it persists for another year, it's not going to kill anyone. But it's one that's very likely to be picked up by other counties to say, yeah, we really support that, we really support that. Aquatics nuisance might be a little more of a push, just because not every community has a reservoir. So I like your order, I like your sequencing.
Yeah, I think that's...
And then if I could just, because Kara's going to be tasked with putting this together, so I want to be sure that she doesn't have any questions before we leave the...
Thank you. I think the one question in the past when we've gone through these, we've identified if there's other jurisdictions that might be submitting similar priorities. So especially just because the transportation and aquatic species are a little bit of rollover from last session, if I'm looking to any of you, if you're aware of any jurisdictions that might be thinking about putting similar issues for that I can call and reach
I
out
really
to.
haven't had any feedback like that, but CCI will group things together that are similar in nature. In past years, there's been 8 different counties submitting something about broadband, type of thing, and so they group them together and then kind of either combine or see if they can come up with a single platform. I don't know that we need to do that legwork, and save a little time there.
Make it simple.
And then, Rachel, if you share the write-up on the water rates.
I will
I have
resend that, the most updated version this morning. I think we can simplify and not include all that, or include the white paper if you'd like, with just filling in their categories similarly.
Okay. And I just want to check in. What I heard was aquatic species is discreetly submitting it as a discrete item, not lumped into the big rollover of the CPW.
At this time.
Okay. Yeah. Just wanted to confirm that.
But we'll include the wildlife corridors as an example of infrastructure in the transportation.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Right, great.
And I believe that the Colorado Parks and Wildlife bill last time, its section on aquatic nuisances was talking about a licensing fee program for boats to show that they were inspected and to create the revenue source. So I would just essentially copy that language as this needs to go forward as a standalone if there's not a larger Colorado Parks and Wildlife.
Have it separate out from hunting licenses.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you, guys. This is really helpful. And, John, this gives me a little bit of an update, and I haven't really had a chance to talk to Steve about it, but I know we had set a meeting on August 24th with the school district, and that's the same day as our district meeting. And so, given the complexity, perhaps, of the water issue and some of these others, I'd like to be the one to go to the district meeting, and then, Steve, you could attend the school board meeting here in the Valley.
It's also the Northwest COG planning session meeting, which is being held here.
Yeah. So
Not too far from the school district.
Just as a heads up, I won't be there on August 24th, but I'll be at the CCI district meeting, wherever it is.
Excellent. Thank you.
I won't be at that school board meeting August 24th either.
Oh, so I'll be chairing the school board meeting.
Okay. So,
I didn't know that. I didn't know about it. I
quorum
must have missed that meeting. But I won't be there.
Okay.
At the Thursday.
Are you guys okay moving forward with the quorum?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. Anybody else have anything for open discussion? I have a
motion to go to executive
Not
session?
yet, because I have a question regarding the kayak park ribbon cutting. The logistics of that, do we know? And I didn't check the water this morning. I checked yesterday morning. It was still looking fairly high.
So Pat had canvassed you guys, I think, via email.
This
You may
morning.
not have seen that
Today?
yet, George. Yeah, to just kind of gauge whether you guys were up for going down the raft. I think the water's pretty high still.
It's rapidly falling.
It is right.
I've been using as a level.
Microphone, please.
Been using as a level about 2,000 CFS as something that is well within the window of propriety to send three
send the Board of
successive
Commissioners down the
rafts
road.
down with
To send your bosses
officials
down?
hanging off the ends of them.
You're with us on this.
Yeah,
Putting you in the
that's
boat.
true. I don't intend to have anything happen to me. I'm not sure if I can speak for anybody else. Anyway, I think that the flow will probably come down to a point where it'll be something.
It's only
we
in 2
can-
days.
Yeah, okay. It's been falling.
No, I know. I've been watching it.
50% of what it was last week at the peak.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be prepared to go in the raft. It's better to be prepared and not go than to not be prepared and go.
That is a fact.
Okay.
So
I emailed yes.
You're up for it?
You only live once. You only die once. So
There you go.
Hang on. I'm in the middle. It's totally surrounded. I've already got that figured out. The little guy's in the middle.
I was hoping to get wet.
So what's the logistics,
When there's one on the
John
side
or
of the
John? What's the logistics
Meeting
in
at
terms
Fisherman's Park.
at what time and?
30.
Oh, okay, at 4:30
We
Fisherman's
can park
Park.
at the office and walk around.
Or you can park
ride
at
the
Fisherman's
bus.
Park.
And then the raft company is actually going to row, and they're just going to let us out, and then they're going to continue down the river.
I know that we don't have to take the rafts out for them, so I assume that they'll continue on down and take out at FedEx.
Yeah, because even with the river dropping, I still don't believe there's room for 3 rafts to pull in there
Really?
and
Well, you
park.
just have to give them a little more time between rafts. Make sure.
We're gonna
Pat
have
knows
a
that.
quick stop and drop.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but the goal, the idea is that it's going to be stop and drop, and the rafts are going to continue down.
Right.
They're not going to try to pull in.
Right. Well, the guides will be dealing with that, so.
Okay. Okay, any questions on that?
We get dry suits?
Doubt it. They're only going about
Yeah, okay.
500.
All right, so that's it for open discussion. So with that, I would accept a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of employee housing program for employee assistance, Whitewater Park stream flow issues, Fales Coal Mountain request to lease water rights, Busk Ivanhoe litigation, all pursuant to CRS 24-6-402 4B.
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, we're in exec session. Thank you, Grassroots.
Okay, very good.